So one of the things that's maybe good about having the recordings is we're going to have some lag between when I'm talking about stuff in class and when you need to turn stuff in for a lab, which is abnormally large. Probably as we all kind of collectively and moves, students and instructors get more experience with Unity, this would be a normal cycle where stuff should get compressed. We should get more efficient. We should be able to cover more, and we should be able to cover the old stuff faster. But for this time, I'm not going to speed up the lab turn-in schedule, but I do need to keep moving at a decent pace with the lectures. I think I've told you I'm going to be out for a couple weeks myself, and I'll have someone around to try to take care of you if you guys should get stuck working on the project and then during that time. And I'll be available via email too, I would assume. But I want to be sure I've covered all the important topics interactively with you before I go. So hopefully everything will work out. I'm sure it will. Let's remember where we were. So we're just finishing up with the coverage of how you get geometry into Blender and how you play with geometry there. Mostly we've been covering in the last minutes of the lecture how you create new geometry. Or it might just be an addition to something that you downloaded, but still new geometry. There is a lot more to say than I'm able to show you in this little presentation, and a lot of it actually is pretty fun once you get over the learning curve. But there's just so much. Okay, at least one more tool. I didn't feel comfortable not talking about spinning, so let's talk about spinning. So we did talk about extrusion. One of the things about extrusion, and I wasn't focused on this when we did it the other day, but one of the things you can do with extrusion is if you're trying to make a certain types of shapes. So like this morning, I just got it in my head to try to make like a signpost. Like everyone kind of uses the same stuff for the side post. It's got like a weird profile. If you cut along parallel to the ground, it like looks kind of like a U. Okay, and it's got a bunch of holes for putting bolts as you go up the thing. Well, like just that weird shape of metal, in point of fact, it's probably an extruded thing in the factory, right? They probably take the molten metal and shoot it out of or put it in some kind of a mold. It's probably basically an extrusion process that actually generates it. So if we want to do something like that inside of Blender, it only makes sense that you could, going into a plan view, a top view here, Shift A to add in a mesh. Now these are the ones we normally focus on. Let me take the plane right now. You can start with this thing. I mean, it's just a plane. It's just a square. And then what I did with this thing this morning was I went and I scaled it along one of the dimensions, to make it kind of narrow, and then you can come and I could box select the end. Am I still in object mode? I am. Why is that? Okay, I think I wanted to hit A and I hit tab. Okay, box select the edge, extrude again, to get this funny shape, extrude again, like this, right? Do the same thing on the other side. Let's do it real quick. And probably better to use a modifier that would enforce the symmetry, but I think this will work just for now, and I hope that's actually flat. It doesn't actually look like it is. Oh, it is. Okay, it is. All right, so basically that's just a planar shape, and now what I can do is I can go to the side, so I can go like to a front view, so there it is, it's completely collapsed, and zoom out since this is going to be big, and then hit extrude, and it does nothing. What's going on? I'm back in object mode again. I don't know what my problem is this morning, but okay, select everything because I want to extrude from the whole shape, extrude, and up we go like that. Okay, so there you go. You got a weird piece of metal, and minus the holes, that's what I wanted. And then when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about the holes. I'm like, well, how would the students how would you guys go ahead and make the holes? That's really a pain in the neck, and it uses like at least two other tools that I'm not really talking about. Right? So there's a notion of subtractive geometry. That's another one of those modeling techniques. So it's the idea that, like, if you wanted a cube, but you wanted like a bite taken out of it, like a spherical, negative space, you would create the cube, you would create the sphere, and there's a modifier to do subtraction. Basically, a cube, subtract the sphere, and you would get the bite taken out. So to do this, I basically would make a whole bunch of cylinders going up the body there that intersect with that thing, and then use subtraction to blast holes in the thing, along the shape of the cylinder. Right? That would make bolt holes. Right? Now, to get the cylinders themselves, though, probably I'd actually go and I would use, there's a duplicate tool, like right over there. I probably would actually make one cylinder, and then I'd automatically duplicate that thing, because there's a lot of bolt holes. I mean, they're like every inch the whole way up that post. I don't want to make all those cylinders by hand. I can make one by hand, and then use that duplicate to instantly go and make a row of them. Right? And again, what are these cylinders for? We don't actually want them in our scene. We're just going to use them to subtract from this thing to make the bolt holes. So there's a lot to know about modeling. If you want to be proficient as a 3D modeler, there's a lot to know. Okay, so this is not my main point for today, though. Let me get rid of this guy. Goodbye. All right, so now what I want to do is, in fact, I want to make a tire, just like an inner tube, because this is one of those shapes. So it's basically a torus. That's a pretty basic shape, but it's not one of the ones that you can just drop in here for free, right? It's not like the cylinder, not like the cube. There's no one button to say, give me a torus shape for an inner tube like tire. Okay, so let's make one. How would you do that? Okay, so let's see. So first of all, I guess I would want to, okay, so I'm going to go in the top view. So if I'm hitting 7, if you've set up, again, in the user preferences, if you click that emulate numpad, you can just hit button 7 to go in top view. Otherwise, you've got to come down to here in view and select it over here. Okay. Now I'm going to add in, again, how am I going to make a tire? I'm going to make it from a circle. I'm going to make it from a circle that I then move around, basically do a circular extrusion of a circle, if that makes any sense. And that's going to give me the shape of the torus. Okay. Let me show you how it's done. Shift A, mesh. This time I want a circle. So a circle is also a planar object, but circular in shape, not too surprising. Now I'm going to grab the position and I'm going to pull it off to the side because it's easier to rotate around the origin. So how far you get it from there is going to depend on how. If you put it way out here, you're going to end up with a real skinny thing that's going to look, I don't know, maybe like a bicycle tire. And I'm thinking more of like a truck tire, so I'm going to put it maybe like here. Okay? And then I need to go in edit mode, tab. Okay? And then you go over and the tool is called spin. There's another one that's related called screw. You can use that literally to make a screw or like a spiral staircase or something like that that's got a weird symmetry where it's almost like a spin, but you need to be moving along another dimension. More complicated. I don't think I've ever actually used that for anything. I'm just going to spin. Okay, now when you click spin, don't touch anything. Don't touch anything. See, otherwise you're going to end up redoing it because I need this little options panel down here. And you've seen, as soon as you do anything with your select something, move something, you're going to lose that options panel. You're going to have to back up and do it again. Okay, now this spin is not at all the spin I want. Starting from the fact that, what it's actually doing is it's smearing it around the plane. That is not what I want. I want to rotate that circle around the y-axis. I want it coming out of the plane, back down in, and all the way back around. Now the next thing about it is it's clearly just going out 90 degrees with the spin. That isn't going to do it. I want a quarter of a truck tire. I want a whole truck tire. So again, be careful. Don't click and don't misclick. Come down here for my angle. Let me put in 360. So that's the first fix. Okay, again, that's not what that looks maybe tire-ish, but it's just a completely flat thing. It's not what I want. Okay, let me show you. I think it's a flat thing. What is going on? Why am I not? Shift middle mouse is not doing the normal thing. I can't actually get it to pan. All right, well that's weird. I guess it must be an artifact of being in this tool, and I don't want to be too forceful because I'm going to end up losing my panel on the side. So, okay, I'll live with it. let me come over here, and this shows the axis around which you're rotating. And you see it is the z-axis, 0, 0, 1. Z-axis is up here, so that's, just smearing the circle around the plane, making a flat thing. Not what I want. I want the y-axis. Okay, so I can click in y and put a 1 in here. Okay, now it's not, it really looks funky. It's getting rotated around some deviant axis on an angle. Let me make the z component also 0. Okay, and there's my tire. Now if I rotate around a bit, I can maybe get a look at it. I don't know why it's really hating me today. It can occasionally do this. I was doing some stuff in Blender before, and I think I've gotten it in a weird mode. Okay, all right, so let me just refrain from moving too much. The next thing I need to do is, this is not very tire-like, okay? It's just too coarse. So I'm going to need more steps in the rotation. So if you come over here and just crank up the number of steps until it's smooth enough for you, whatever your preference may be. Okay, now I can drop out, and now I'll risk playing with this thing. Let's go like this. Let me come over here. So this outliner up at the top has my objects. So it's still called circle because that's what it was born as. Let me see. Wow, this tool really needs a. Oh my God. It added a whole nother one in. Don't need that. Control Z. All right. This really needs some tweaking here, I think. I wonder if. All right, there we go. All right, anyway, you can see what we built. Okay, questions about this? That's your spin tool. Very helpful. Like an extrude, but circular. All right, let's see what else we have to do here. Okay, so we're basically done with our coverage of the modeling tools. Again, more to touch than I've even mentioned. But I want to just show you, it is pretty typical that you might want to model from blueprints. So let me just show you how you do that. The basic idea is that you basically, this is really modeling from a picture. It might literally be a photograph. The idea is you want to paste it up and have it visible in the background as you do your 3D modeling. That's it, whatever the image may be. Now, if you look online, if you just Google for blueprint, there are some sites around that actually have some largest free blueprint and vector drawing collection. So if you go in here, now a lot of these they want to sell them to you, okay? But for modeling purposes, you don't need a beautiful blueprint. You're not building the thing after all. I mean, it's just a very coarse image like this preview image right here might be good enough. So if I right click on this thing, you see they want to actually sell it to me for $20 or something. But if I just save image as, I'll save that to my downloads, 1326 mid, okay? And now I'll show you how I can bring that into Blender and make it visible. So it's a little tricky, but useful. Okay, let me just reset Blender. Control N, reload startup file. Yeah, please do that. Okay, there we go. All right. So here's what you do. So the first thing is you access that on this other shelf. There's a left shelf, but also this right shelf, which is normally hidden. So I need to pull that out by clicking that button or dragging it out. Okay. Then you kind of go down and you're looking for the background images subpane, which is normally collapsed. So you click the triangular widget on the left to open it up. Okay, and click it to maybe turn it on. Okay, then you say add image. And it gives you another sub window. You come in here, okay, open the image. Okay, now you got to navigate to wherever you put your image. So I've got mine in downloads, blah, blah, something 26 mid. Okay, so it's that one. Okay, now you see nothing, okay, because you're going to have to do some additional things to make it visible. The first thing to say about images are they are not useful for modeling at arbitrary angles. That's the first point. They're useful for plan views, for front, top, side, pure plan views. So Blender, realizing this, is helping you by suppressing the background image unless you are in the plan views. Okay. Now I should say also, again, just in the vast heap of things that I'm barely touching on, you could actually have separate images. Like if you wanted to model your own car, your own boat, and you actually go out and carefully take a front, a side, a top view. Okay, well you have 3 images, it can handle that. It will let you put separate images in for each plan view. Okay, I just have one, but it's got all the plan views in it. I'll show you how to deal with that. All right, so the image is here. All right, so if I hit 1 to go into front perspective, there we are, and there's my image. No, it isn't. Okay, because the second thing about images are they are not useful for modeling if you are doing them with a perspective camera. You know, they simply aren't, because the points won't, because of perspective, the points shouldn't line up perfectly with the image back behind. So you have to put the camera into orthographic mode, i.e. isometric mode, to actually make the image visible. So you do that, I think down in view. Actually, I think the 5 key will do that. We'll toggle the camera. Boom, there it is. And there's my image right up there. Okay? All right, so that's how you start. And then, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with this, but what you would do next is, okay, this is the front. You see on the top left it says front orthographic. Do you see? Everyone see that in the top left? Okay, front orthographic. So this is front view. So I would just grab this thing over. I would put it here. You know, maybe zoom in some. Oh, that was not good. Am I still front? Okay. All right, pan like this. Okay, the next thing you would do is, I'll get started. I'll show you the first 2 seconds of it. Okay. All right. I would probably sit. This is beyond the learning points, okay? But just so you get a little bit of flavor, I would change the rendering mode to not obscure the image. I would put it in wireframe mode, okay, so I can just see the outside, okay? I would probably, hopefully this won't blow your mind. This is totally optional stuff, right? Okay, so if you don't follow all these details, it's okay. I would probably want to actually use a mirror modifier on this thing to actually enforce the symmetry left to right. I mean, otherwise you've got to do everything twice, and the thing's still going to be lopsided after you've gone and done your best effort. Okay, and I learned with the way the mirror tool works now, I need a separate object at the center of this object to actually make the mirror work just anywhere. And I really need to be able to move this model around because I'm going to put it in front of the different images as I'm working on it. So that told me I had to actually go and, let's see. So you see there's this thing, the 3D cursor, that thing there. Like I said, it's got a bunch of special uses. They're a little more advanced than we get into in this course, so it might seem like it's pretty damn useless. Why did they bind that to the left mouse button? But it actually has a bunch of uses. One of them is when you put new geometry in, and now I'm going to need to put in a new special object just to represent the center of the car, because that's what it expects, okay? And that 3D cursor is right in the right spot to do that. You see it's dead centered around the actual center of the object, okay? Now, if yours wasn't, you could go into, let's see, object, maybe snap. You could snap cursor to center, okay, and then that should do that. Wherever that cursor is, off in no man's land, it could go bloop and be down in the middle of your object. Now you could do Shift A, and amongst the normal objects, there's this general notion, it's the same in Unity. I don't think you've seen it yet with what we've done, but there's a notion of an empty object. Have you seen it? Maybe you've seen it in the tutorials. I don't remember talking about it. Maybe I mentioned it. Okay. All right. So we got an empty object. I want it to actually have axes, so I can something I can see. So it's going to have no geometry. So I would do that. Okay. Now I have my empty object. Okay. Now my empty object, while it's still selected, I would actually hold Shift and also select this cube. I would tell the empty object to take the cube as its parent, so that when I drag it around, I don't lose it. So these are all like little points. But the general way of learning this is by doing it wrong 10 times. And every time you do it wrong, you'll correct one little part. The next time, and you'll be a little more efficient. And eventually, you get it so you're very smooth. Okay. You can hit Control P to parent that empty object to the outer object. Okay. And actually, I blew it because it's actually the object is down here. So. Anyway, but that's what you should do. It shouldn't have been down there. It should have been, I don't know why it got created at the origin rather than at the cursor. That's strange. It normally gets created at the cursor. Okay, now I'd have to drag it over, whatever, whatever, whatever. But when you go and you put in a mirror modifier, let me just show you why I had to do all that. Add modifier, mirror. Okay, it wants an object to use as the center. You know, either that or I think if you leave that blank, but you leave your object centered at the absolute origin of the scene forever and ever and ever, that's also fine. You know, but that doesn't go with modeling with an image on the background. Okay? Okay, so then you go in here. You can click this thing to select the object. You can click over here, the eyedropper, to then go select the object in the scene. The empty doesn't have anything to actually click with the eyedropper, so I'd go here. I'd find my empty. There it is. I guess I actually do have to move the thing. Darn it. Oh, wow, it's got everything. Do you see the mirror modifiers already doing something ugly there? And let's see. Where's my empty? Okay, it is parented to the thing. Okay, you see as I move it, where it's mirroring with respect to is changing? Okay, so I want this in the center. Now I'm not going to be able to, I'm not smart enough to go and, I don't know how to actually do it perfectly, so this is going to be a little bit rough. You see that's a little bit off. If you did it right, you shouldn't have any, you shouldn't be able to see the mirror at all because I haven't done anything yet. Okay, there it is. That's roughly right. Okay, now when you actually go in and, let me see, you select the main object, you go and you go to edit it. Okay, so what are you going to do with this? How are you going to edit it? You'll do stuff like, you basically want to follow the contour of the car, right? So do a box select of these vertices in the bottom, maybe pull them up to where the bottom of the car actually is. Maybe move the right edge back to where the side starts coming down, where I'm going to actually need more geometry. Box select over here. Pull that in to maybe around there. Why did it not? Okay, let's undo that. I'm not sure why. I am in orthographic mode. Yeah, I don't know why. Something's still wonky with my mirroring.
Bring I think maybe bring the left side into the center line.
The left side? These guys?
Oh.
Yeah, something's weird. Yeah.
Yeah, left side to the center.
Well, I'm not sure. You mean just these vertices? Like maybe?
Just to the center line of the car itself.
Oh yeah, that could be. Yeah, well, anyway. It's not a very impressive demonstration, but I just wanted to give you the idea. I know I can't give you the details, right? Then you'd probably grab this and you'd go and you would extrude further. You see it automatically happening on the other side, okay? But this is gonna. There's a problem in the middle here. You'd have to do it. I would also have to start it again because I qualify as a beginner for this tool, okay? So you would maybe go down to here, and then maybe you'd come up and you'd say, oh, well, this top thing, I want this to actually follow the line of the car, right, like that, right? And then, little by little, you go and actually make it, you get the shape correct from the front, and then you look at any other angle and it's terrible, then you realize, okay, we need to go in the other plan views and do the same thing. And once you have some geometry there, then those other weird tools like the ring cut thing, if you remember that, those things are your friend to go, because a lot of times you'll realize, oh, I need to be able to move this thing down, but it's just there's no vertices there at all to move. Okay, that's where you need to make more vertices. All right? Okay. All right. So I'm going to leave it there for now and move on. So the main thing I want to get to today is get into texturing. Okay, so this is a whole nother issue, right? So now let's assume that we have our 3D geometry, we stole it, we created it ourselves, we stole something, and then we modified it to get the right thing, okay? But now we've got to get a texture onto the object to make it actually look like something. To give it material properties. It's supposed to look metal. It's supposed to look like this table or, my computer. Okay. So this is, as I said before, a very tricky issue. So everyone knows this, certainly in the military world. I mean, the issue is no different from, so textures are flat, your object is not flat. It's a problem, you know. Think about the issue of just something that we have like, you know, literally centuries of experience with. Like, tell me the good solutions for flattening out the globe. Because, you know, it's handy to make flat maps of the globe, right? What are the solutions? Well, paper's rectangular, so let's just make it rectangular. Oh, but then like everything's distorted. Like Greenland looks like huge, and you know, so that's no good. Oh, okay, so we'll do Mercator projection. Oh, we'll cut the thing up carefully. No distortion now. Yeah, now it looks like, you know, this obscenely complicated shape, okay? And now the issue is going to be, in the context of doing 3D modeling, if you take your sphere and cut it up Mercator projection style, the problem is that, if we're not going to leave it on a flat map like you do with a Mercator projection, we're going to cut it out and glue it on the globe, right? And you're going to have seams, so the seams end up being visible quite often, even when you're really, really careful. You're going to have visible seams everywhere on that globe, not what you want. You want very few seams, and you'd like them to be hidden from the user as much as possible, okay? So those are the issues. So we're going to have stuff that actually makes the problem of flattening out a globe pale by comparison. You could be doing anything. You could be doing a human figure. You might be doing, you know, even a car is much more complicated than a globe. So how do you actually deal with that? Okay? All right. So do you guys know what the notion of UV coordinates is? Did you cover those at all? You did? Okay. 0 to 1, yeah. But UV coordinates reference what?
Kind of like X and Y.
What is it?
Kind of like X and Y.
It is kind of like X and Y, but for what purpose?
That's how you how to pin it to the object.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's a coordinate system that's kind of pinned to the surface of an object. Okay? And that coordinate system you don't get for free. Okay? Now you don't get it for free because it has to do with how you want to flatten the object out. Essentially, we've got to flatten the object out. We've got to decide to flatten an object out, whether it be a globe or a model of a car, you're going to have to cut it. You're going to have to cut it. You're going to have to make some cuts, and at those cuts, there will probably be visible seams. Okay. Now, the computer is smart in some things, certainly for building 3D models. It has plenty of smarts, but it doesn't know how you're going to actually use your 3D model. It has no idea, okay? And it's important to be strategic with the seams. And we would like to have as few as possible, and we'd like to be able to tuck them away. They're going to be there. They're going to be visible. If the user insists on finding the seams, he will find the ugly seams. But at least we can try to hide them, right? I mean, look at my pants. They didn't choose to put the seam right up the center of the, there is a seam. There has to be a seam because cloth is also flat. Now, they put it on the inside, on the inner leg, where it's a little less visible. And you need to do the same thing when you're deciding how your 3D model should be flattened out. And only you know where the user's eye is likely to be, so you have to decide exactly how to do that. Okay? So this is always going to be an interactive process. There's a special workflow for it. Let's take a look. Okay? So I'm going to reset Blender again. All right, the cube is fine. Let's start with flattening a cube because pretty much everybody has like assembled a box from a flat representation and then taking the 3D box, taking it back apart. So it's like a case we understand. Okay, so let's flatten the box. But we're going to go into a different workflow. So if you look up at the upper left, okay, this is only the second workflow we're going to use, and it's the last one. Okay, but there's one called UV editing. UV, right? That's where we need to go. So if we go there, here you have your 3D object over here and the flattened view, of course we don't have one yet, on the left-hand side. All right? So this is what we're going to do. We're going to decide how to get the object flat. We're going to try to flatten it out and make seams in good places and make them as simple as possible. And we also want to learn how to preview textures and even create textures from scratch. So there's Blender has a nice 3D paint mode now. And it's kind of too crude to make really nice looking art, but a lot of the art you might need to do if you're just making kind of supporting assets, right? For, you're just adding something into a scene to direct the user or something like that. It's plenty good for that. So we're going to use that to get started here. Okay? To get started and get most of the way to the finish as well. All right, so the first thing is the box. So if you go to the box, you do the flattening in edit mode. So tab to go into edit mode. See the edit mode changed at the bottom of the window. Okay? And you do unwrap with the U key. So if you hit U, don't be careful, don't hit anything yet. You see there's a bunch of different options here. Okay? Now, the options are pretty dumb to begin with. If you just say unwrap, what it does is it literally takes every one of these sides, right? How many sides does a cube have? 6 sides, right? Takes each of the 6 sides and lays them right over one another there. Which you might think is really, really dumb, but actually if you have low standards for the art you're going to produce, or you're trying to do something really, really simple, like, I just need a metallic texture on all sides of my object, that's actually already usable. Okay, for anything else, it's not usable. I'm going to pretend, for our case, that we're going to try to make a die, like one of a pair of dice, a 6-sided die that you would roll for a game. So that's a good example, because there it's clearly not good enough to have every side have the same stuff on it, right? If every side has a 1, the users will not be happy. Okay, so we want to do something better. Now you could try, if you hit U, it's really these top 2 modes that I find are usually the best guessers for what you want. If you say Smart UV Project and click through that, that actually splits out the sides. And honestly, to make a simple die that was all white, and then maybe with black pips on it, okay? This would be plenty good, okay? But it certainly makes a lot more seams than are necessary. That's not the normal way we would flatten out a box. So I want to still do it our own way. Yeah.
Please show again how you arrange that in this.
Okay, I did nothing. I just hit U, and select Smart UV Project, and accept the default option, and you will get this. Okay? All right? All right, so let's pretend, let me actually go back. I'm going to do just a normal, hit unwrap and it just stays. All right, fine. Good. So basically what it's doing is, it still is just taking the sides and just kind of randomly putting them into an array. Better than nothing, and good enough for the die, but still not what I would like. If there was a pattern that was going over the edges, which normally there will be, right? You will care how things look at the edges. Then you don't just want each pane to just be putting it in a random place on the texture, because it's going to make ugly visible seams. Okay. Now, if you want to control the seams, unfortunately, to flatten out a box, you're going to need a lot of seams anyway. Okay. But we can do a little better job than random. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. What you can do is you can tell Blender it's okay to cut here on your model. Again, only you know that, because there's going to be a seam. It normally will be visible there. Okay, so instead of having a seam just everywhere, pretty much there'll be seams on every possible edge. We can do better than that. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to hit A to deselect. Okay, how are we going to flatten this thing out? Okay, so if you can see, if I cut, let's see, I think if I cut here, if I allow it to cut here, and here, and here, and here, and then also the back tongue, like this, I think that's enough to flatten it out, because I've done this a million times. That might not be obvious to you, but anyway, whatever you're going to be flattening in the future, it won't be this exact thing anyway. And a lot of it is just trial and error. So for example, let me show you how you get started. You want to be able to select edges. So you either want to go into edge select mode down here, or just hold the Alt key, and that's what I'm doing, and I'm selecting that edge. Okay, so let's just start with that one edge. We can go, and how do we tell Blender it's okay to cut here? Okay, what you do is you do Control E, okay, to go into edges, the edge window, and you say Mark Seam. Okay, if you don't want that, there's a clear seam there as well. Okay, now after I deselect the edge, let me do this, you see it remembers that is a seam there. Okay? All right. Now, it's not really enough to do anything with, though, unfortunately. Okay? So if I go and I do my unwrap, if I select everything and I do my unwrap, actually the seam just confused it. Now look at that nice unwrap. Okay? essentially this is a complete garbage unwrap. It's just smashed everything to the bottom, and you won't even see the texture on there. All right, so let's actually take this back tongue. I'm going to clear that seam. Let me clear that seam out. You don't have to. It's going to be useful in the end. But let me clear that out. Let me just show you something that's at least partially useful. That back tongue there, right? I said, I know from experience, we're going to basically need that whole tongue to be able to be free. Oh, and by the way, I don't know, if you can't see the back, remember there's this button here, which allows you to select things through the cube. You see the difference? Yeah, for doing this kind of work, sometimes it's useful to be able to see the back. Okay? All right, so I'm going to hold Alt and Shift this time so I can select multiple things. I have one edge, two edges, three edges. You could do these one at a time. It's perfectly okay, but I'm doing them in one fell swoop. Then Control E, mark seam. Okay. Did it actually work? Maybe, maybe not. Let's see. Let's rotate around and see. Oh, I see it. Yep, it looks good. Okay, except it looks like it got the top too. I don't like that. Let me go. I don't want the top to be selected. Let me go Control E, clear seam to make sure that's not selected. Okay, that's better. Yeah, I don't know how that top one got selected. All right. Now I'm going to rotate back around, back where I was. Okay, select everything and say, go ahead, unwrap. Okay, so now you see that the one tongue there that I enabled it to cut is coming cleanly out here, and everything else is a mess because it doesn't have enough seams to actually be able to flatten it out. Okay? So if we want to do better, we're going to have to give the thing more seams. Any questions about this so far? Let me show you how I flatten it, and then I can take a look, because this is something you'll have to do. So this is a little more important than some of the other stuff. Okay, let me go, and now I know I need all these side edges also to be seams. So since I know it, let me just dive right in. In general, I would not know this if this were a new model to me. So I would learn it the way you would probably learn it, by trial and error. I would just fail and get bad unwraps and bad unwraps and bad unwraps until eventually I made enough cuts and it gets flat. Okay, so let me hold Alt, hold Shift. Okay, one edge, two edges. Oh, what's it doing? Selecting the whole side. Okay, that's weird. Yeah. Do I have to do them one at a time? Why is it doing this to me? It's selecting the whole thing. That is really very strange. Okay, I'm going to get out of here. Let me try to go into edge select mode. Let's see if that's better. One, Shift, two. Okay, this is better. Now I'm able to select all four without it going nuts and trying to select the whole cube. Okay, now I can do Control E again, mark seam. Okay, deselect everything. You can rotate around. Hopefully you see, okay, yeah, looks good. Now the front pane, okay, so what I've saved is, you notice there are not any seams right around the front. So for a die, this is actually not that useful. But if this were actually a box that we're sitting in the corner of the room, and it's just supposed to give the user an impression it's a cardboard box, or it's a crate in the corner of the room, he's not going to look at it very carefully. It's going to be very good. The edges he's likely to see are not ones that are going to have seams. All right, so we got it all. Now what we do is we select everything, U for unwrap, boom. And now you see something that actually looks sensible. Okay? All right. Now, the next thing I want to show you, I'm going to open the floor for questions, but just to give you, if you got it and it's working good, I just want to show you that you can now move these vertices around as you like. You can select them and move them around. Now, this is done very often, actually. So let me show you the kind of things people would do. Like you could go and you could take this one square, you could scale this up, right? Now, you really have to know what you're doing to do this, but I guess the main point I want to make here is that not everything is equally worthy of getting pixels from the texture on the surface. If you open up the texture for a human model, what you will usually see is the lion's share of it, at least a third of it, is going to be a giant face of the guy, because people want to see a good face on a human being. And then the rest will be like a tiny body and his shoes, and the other stuff will just kind of be squeezed in where it can be squeezed in. Okay, that's very normal, and the fact that you can actually edit this and move it around facilitates that. Okay, questions? Is anyone completely stuck on this? Because this is something you're going to need to do. Yeah.
How'd you get the side screen off?
Okay, so you want to go into a different mode. Up here, you're in the default mode. Click on the window thing there. Go to UV editing. There you go. Okay, the four are the ones going back, the ones parallel to the ground. This one, this one, this one, and this one.
Yeah, but so if you think about it, like, so if you have this one, so you have these back three,
Okay.
right? There's that one, that one, that one.
Maybe.
Yeah. And then if you
Then
do that one, that one,
Oh, well,
that
first
one,
select
that
A.
one.
A to select
It
everything.
allows it to
Okay, U to unwrap.
unfold nicely like that.
Then click unwrap. Oh, okay, well.
There it is.
More or different scene. Yeah, the clear scene will only clear the one. Oh, that actually clears it all.
Pixar.
Okay, so what you need to do is the tongue back here. So 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7.
You guys know that I worked on Toy Story 19.
And we just gotta get my little killer shooter guy back in Unity.
Okay. All right.
Finish this script.
Okay, so let me just preview what we're going to do coming up. What we still have to do is actually, create and/or apply textures to this thing. Once you get it. So I guess what you want to be for Wednesday. Hopefully, I remember not to come here and lecture. Try to lecture tomorrow. Okay, but for Wednesday, you'd like to be able to get to this point. If you can get to this point, then you'll be in good shape for us to go and we'll first paint a texture. I'll ask you to do both for the assignment to be turned in, not this Friday, but week from Friday. I'll want one thing with a hand painted texture on it, and another thing where we just steal some textures, which is more typical these days. Wood, metal, dirt, stones, bricks, whatever, that kind of stuff. Okay. And then the third objective will be to actually have you have created a model yourself. Now, just in case, is anyone already done with the survival shooter? Oh, someone is. Okay. Someone almost is. Okay. So,
His wife's done with it.
right. So if you're done, and if you want to get ahead, or if you need to work ahead for this class, then the other issue would be, what was I going to say? What I want to say then to you guys is you'll have a choice. You're going to probably need to have modeled at least 2 objects for the turn-in, because I want one with a hand-painted texture and one with a texture you take from the web. And you will have a choice for both of them, whether you want to model things completely from scratch, which is fine. This will give you, if you do that way, your model will be simpler, okay? But that's not all bad, especially if you have to go and texture the model, because the unwrapping is hard. Or the more elaborate your model, the more work it is to actually get things unwrapped. The other alternative would be you can go and use online tutorials, but be careful that the tutorial uses the same, skim through the tutorial and make sure it's not modeling for the movie workflow. So that's not going to help you. You'll end up with a thing with materials on it. If it's not putting textures and doing UV unwrapping, then okay, that's probably a movie workflow model, and you'll get a very beautiful model that you can show me in Blender, but you can't bring it out into Unity, at least not with the materials on it. You can bring the geometry out, but not the materials. So be careful. And also, just in general, make sure that it deals with if you have a tutorial, and again, it makes a very elaborate 3D geometry, but it doesn't deal with the texturing at all, well, then that's going to be entirely your problem to fill that in, and that's non-trivial. Okay? So your choice. If you insist on something beautiful, you probably need a tutorial. If you want to just work on the basics and show that you've mastered the basics of the tools, you can do that with your own knowledge in the course notes. Okay, very good, fair enough. Any running issues?
If you have a minute, sir, I
Yeah.
wrote the script for the little gentleman in the survival shooter, and then once
Yeah.
I completed the script, he disappeared from the scene.
Oh, all right. Well, maybe if it's real easy, I can maybe solve it. Let me take a look. Okay, so I'm going to turn this thing off, like I always forget to. Let me come here.